Welcome back, people, from Fire 103, Fire Protection Systems and Equipment. This is John P. Kelleher, and I am back. And now I'm going to be talking about Part 5. Part 5, which is Special Extinguishing Systems. Special Extinguishing Systems. Okay, let's get to it. Again, you can use this as a supplement to the PowerPoint, which is on Canvas. Special extinguishing systems are used where sprinklers are not the best solution. Examples: flammable combustible liquids, food preparation equipment, and highly sensitive computer equipment. Automatic sprinklers are successful know this, controlling the fire. Specialized systems must extinguish that fire. Automatic sprinklers are successful controlling the fire. Specialized systems must extinguish that fire. Examples of special extinguishing systems are: number 1, dry chemical; number 2, wet chemical; number 3, halogenated agents; number 4, carbon dioxide; and number 5, foam. We'll go over each one. Number 1 is dry chemical extinguishing systems. They're needed for rapid knockdown, and reignition is unlikely. When we talk about knockdown, we talk about how flames are flaming up, how you put an agent on it, it knocks that flame down, knockdown. So when you talk about effective knockdown, that means the flames will be knocked down. So needed for rapid knockdown and reignition is unlikely. It protects the following. Dry chemical extinguishing systems protect the following: quenching operations, dip tanks, paint spray booths, kitchen cooking areas, and exhaust duct systems. An example of a paint spray booth is when you go to an auto body shop, you'll see a separate area inside the auto body shop in a smaller room where the car goes in, completely sealed off, and that's where the sprayer paints the car. That's what they call by the paint spray booth. Dry chemical agent is very messy. It's not a clean agent. So when we talk about a dry chemical agent, that's a messy agent. A clean agent is an example like halon, which is clean. Two main types of dry chemical extinguishing systems. There's the local application, and then there's the total flooding. The local application is designed to discharge the agent in a specific surface, like a cooking area of a kitchen. The total flooding is designed to give a thick concentration of agent in a closed or confined area, like that paint spray booth that I just mentioned. So local application is, if it's going to knock down, you want it to knock down in the kitchen area of a restaurant, that's that local application. If you're talking about total flooding, that means it would be the entire restaurant, okay? Or in that case, the paint spray booth, or knock down that one separate room, the paint spray booth. So know the difference between local application and total flooding. Dry chemical agents is made of two broad categories. They're engineered and they're pre-engineered. Engineered being calculated and constructed for a specific hazard. They're large and expensive. And then you have pre-engineered, which is the most common and protects the areas of a given size and installed at any kitchen. Example, like I said, a hood and duct. Hood and duct system is like where you go to a restaurant, and if you look back in the kitchen area, you'll see, the people where they're doing the cooking and such. You see other grills. Well, there'll be these gigantic plenum hoods on top of the kitchen area, okay, on top of the grills, I should say. And that is underneath the kitchen areas, has little nozzles, like a sprinkler system. And that nozzle and the tanks next to it has a product, what they call dry chemical agent, okay? But now they switched over to wet chemical agent, which is R102, which we may go into detail later. But in any case, that's that hood and duct system. That's an example of that total flooding, as they say, okay? And pre-engineers, that most common area given size, like a hood and duct. All dry chemical systems have storage tanks, piping to carry the agent, nozzle to dispense the gas or agent, and the actuating mechanism. So the storage tanks could be gas or agent, piping to carry the agent, the nozzles to dispense the agent, and that actuating mechanism. There are two types of nozzles for dry chemical systems. There's the one-position nozzle or the straight stream nozzle, and the two-position nozzle, which projects a fan-shaped stream. Fan-shaped stream, sorry. The one-position nozzle or straight stream is, when they talk about straight stream, is when you open up that bale when you're going to shoot the fire, okay? When you open up the bale, shooting fire, if you have a straight stream, shooting straight, that's to knock down that fire, which is really good. We want to knock that fire down. That's important. And that straight stream is that straight stream directed at the base of the fire, okay? Comes in as a straight nozzle. When we talk a fan shape, that means it's more like a spray, goes out as spray, okay? And in the business we talk about, which you guys will learn later if you go on with this business, if you continue as a firefighter. When you get on the nozzle, we're going to talk about right to fight, left to live. So when you're on the nozzle, if you go right to fight, that means you're going to get a direct straight stream, okay, to fight the fire. And then left to live, you're going to get a fan shape, which will protect you with all that over the heat, and that fan shape will protect you. So remember those two items. So that being said, is the one position nozzle or straight stream, and two position nozzle, which projects a fan shape stream. The most common type of actuating mechanism, probably you see it, remember it as the in the sprinkler system, and that is that fusible link. The most dry chemical extinguishing systems used to be inspected are biannually or every 6 months. So know this, most dry chemical extinguishing systems need to be inspected biannually, every 6 months, twice a year. Okay, so know that as well. Number 2, wet chemical extinguishing systems used for commercial cooking hoods, plenums, ducts, and associated with cooking appliances. Example, R102. Again, I kind of touched on R101, R102. Back when I was in prevention, when I was a fire prevention officer, how I can teach this class, we had the hood and duct systems used to spray a product, a dry chemical powder, which is R101. And that's that kind of dry chemical powder you see in extinguisher, comes out like a green chalk dust, sprays out. Very messy, okay? Left a big residue on when there was, if it did activate. And then what I was told by the state was I now had to enforce what the state said. And now these hood and duct systems had to switch over their tanks, what were inside the tanks, which was dry chemical powder, R101. Now they had to switch over to R102, which is a wet chemical agent, okay? So they had to change their whole systems, cost tens of thousands of dollars sometimes, some places. And the idea is I had to enforce that. So I didn't really want to tell this mom and pop Asian restaurants or the Latin restaurants, whatever, small restaurants, say, hey, you got to change your systems. It's going to cost you $15,000, may put you out of business. But the idea is the wet chemical agent is so much more effective than the dry chemical agent, okay? And when I saw that when I went to Texas, which I think I mentioned in class before, is when I went to an oil fire training school in Texas, we shot some wet chemical agent products. And when there's the knockdown, it came out like a small little spray. Unbelievable. So much more effective than the dry chemical powder. So that kind of sold me, and that's how I would project that type of information back to the clients and the people I had to enforce these rules to, or the ordinances to, I should say. So that being said, is when we talk about R102 is the wet chemical agent. R101 was the dry chemical agent. And the dry chemical agent is that dry powder, okay, we talked about fire extinguishers. But we like that wet chemical extinguisher system. Extremely good knockdown. Don't have to need that much of it for it to go down. And it works much more, and it's much more cleaner. And another thing I was going to say was, example R102, how effective was, is another selling point for when I had to tell my clients and also the different people I represented in the area I worked was, normally with the dry chemical powder, it would be up to 2 weeks to clean up. It was just a gigantic mess. This powder, this magic chalk dust sprayed everywhere around where the restaurant was, not just the kitchen area, but go back into the seating area and such. Unbelievable big mess cleanup. Knocked the fire down, did a great job, but the idea was it took 2 weeks to clean it up. But with the wet chemical agent, we had a restaurant, Jack in a Box, at the end of the corner on the border of Richmond and El Cerrito. They put their R102 in. They had a crack in the grill. It flashed. The product activated, the mechanism activated because it reached a certain temperature, activated. R102 product, wet chemical agent, went across the grill, knocked the fire down instantaneously. Well, then found out about it. We went there for a call. Within 2 or 3 hours later, they're back in business, okay? It only took them 2 or 3 hours to clean up as opposed to 2 or 3 weeks. So that's another point about that wet chemical as opposed to the dry chemical. Okay, so moving on. So you know the difference between R101 and R102. Wet chemical is typically made of water and potassium carbonate or potassium acetate. These are excellent for flammable liquids, gasolines, grease, or Class A fires, but not good for the Class C because why? Water is a good conductor, which is not good for a charged electrical. You know about that, right? Class A is ordinary combustibles. Class C is energized electrical, right? Wet chemical systems are not as messy as dry systems. The wet chemical systems are not as messy. I kind of covered that already, didn't I? The third type of special extinguishing system is the halogenated systems. Most halon is that product, 1211 or 1301, and are used in fixed systems. Halon is an unbelievable product. We talk about the fire tetrahedron. What does the fire consist of? Fuel, heat, oxygen, right? Fuel, heat, oxygen, air, and that chemical chain reaction amongst all three of them, right? That's the fire tetrahedron. Well, halon is the most effective for that chemical chain reaction. That's why it's so good of a product. We'll talk about failing. But halon is not good for what? The ozone and for ozone layer and the environment, of course. And it is still in use today. I heard they use it in Sweden, some other countries, but it's quite expensive. And again, not good for the environment. All right, moving on. So wet chemical is typically made of water and potassium carbonate, potassium acetate. This is excellent for flammable liquids. Wet chemical systems are messy and dry systems. Okay, halogenated agent systems, number 3. Mostly halon 1211 and 1301 are used in fixed systems. Fixed systems meaning it's already locked in. It's not mobile, it's fixed, it's locked in that location. Mostly used for Class B and C fires, but limited to Class Bs mostly. Halon is a clean agent, but bad for the environment, which just talked about, right? Number 4 type of system is the carbon dioxide extinguishing system. Abides by NFPA 12 and is similar in design to the halon system. Halon systems interrupt the chemical chain reaction. The CO2 settles over the hazard, displaces the air, and smothers the fire. So know this. The CO2 settles over the fire, displaces the air, gets rid of the air, and smothers that fire. Okay? Know those 3 terms. Elimination of oxygen is great for fire suppression, but very dangerous to people. The total flooding systems we talked about earlier are designed to deliver at least 34% concentrate of CO2. How much do we need oxygen of air? The air we breathe, how much percent of oxygen we breathe? Anybody know that? Well, it comes down to 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, and like less 1% of the inert gas. So if there's a 34% concentrate of CO2, can we breathe that? Absolutely not. We need a self-contained breathing apparatus, don't we? So the total flooding system is designed to deliver at least 34% concentrate of CO2. We need 21% of oxygen, 78% nitrogen, and 1% gas to breathe. So what's that mean? The total flooding systems use what they call a pre-discharge alarm. Know this as well as the concentration. A pre-discharge alarm and the discharge alarms to alert the others. There's a time delay after the alarm, and then there's a CO2 concentrate exchange. Discharges say CO2 concentrate. So you have that pre-discharge alarm, blah, 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 alarm, notify everybody or get on mask or get on some kind of breathing apparatus, and then the product will put it out. So remember, no one enters the scene without an SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus. SCUBA is the U in between it, right? And some fire departments have a CO2 unit like San Francisco Fire, which are local applications. Local applications are smaller doses of CO2 and are much less dangerous than total flooding systems. Another example of that is we did some training in Richmond on the harbor. Everybody was there, Berkeley, Richmond, El Cerrito, West County, Contra Costa counties, and then San Francisco showed up with their CO2 unit. And what that is just like a big truck in the back. Instead of water in it, okay, it has CO2. And so what to do when they had shipboard fires, is anybody Navy people out there, in order to get rid of that fire, what do you got to eliminate? The air, right? Or the air, right? So when you eliminate the air, what's the fire do? Fire goes down. So what the Navy does, and the shipboard fires, what they focus on is containing that fire, okay? So you eliminate the air, and then also by pumping in CO2, which displaces the air, of course, to 34%, no longer can breathe, it will knock that fire down much more quicker. Okay, does that make sense? So we saw that in action. We were down, walking around the tank block, on the ship. We heard the pre-discharge alarm. Everybody put on masks and Scots. We walked out of the area. It was displaced. It shut down the areas, confined it, put down the fire and such. We did this drill. It's pretty interesting. But that being said, as we needed to hear that discharge alarm, pre-discharge alarm, we needed to be in SCBAs, and we needed to be sure that that CO2 concentrate was effective, and it does knock the fire down. It contains it. Okay. Systems description are made up of actuation devices, agent storage containers, piping, and nozzles. Activation devices are fixed temperatures or rate of rise, which we learned about that in our sprinkler systems. Auto operations and modern systems use smoke detectors to activate the CO2 system and are high or low pressure. There are three main means of system activation. The automatic operation, know this, triggered by a product detector. The normal manual operation, a person manually activates it, like you pull down a manual handle, like you see in a movie theater or something like that. You see these schools. People, I know you probably got in trouble by pulling that alarm, manual alarm. Pulling down that manual alarm. We'll cover that next week, part 6. When we talk about manual alarm pulls. That's a manual pull alarm where you actually physically grab it and pull it down. And then the third type is emergency manual operation. So if the two modes don't fail, then it'll work automatically. So the three means of system activation are automatic operation, normal manual operation, and then emergency manual operation will override that. Okay. And then the last type of extinguishing system we're going to talk about is the foam extinguishing systems. And this is used where water may not be an effective agent. Places like flammable liquids, processing plants, aircraft hangars, roll paper, fabric storage, those kind of big bulk centers full of product. Okay? The foam works by know this, smothers, it prevents the air and flammable vapors from combining, separating, where it intervenes between the fuel and the fire, cooling, and that lowers the temperature of the fuel and the surface, and suppressing, which prevents the release of flammable vapors. Okay, so when you talk about foam and how effective it is, and I didn't really talk about much in a couple segments ago, but what foam wants to do is you want to spray a pattern, okay, and then have that foam create a bunch of bubbles and then just kind of seep on top of the product, whether it's ignited or not. And then you're going to just basically cover the surface area. And like I said, it will smother it. It will knock down the fire, if sometimes not as much as you want, but kind of that pool will smother it. But you got to have enough before you start, of course. And then that's how you basically knock down the product, or you cover it so it will not ignite it in any case. Okay? So, moving along. Let's see, there are 3 stages of foam. Okay, there's 2 stages of formation of foam. The first stage is water's mixed with the foam liquid concentrate. The second stage, the foam solution passes through the piping or hose line to a foam nozzle or sprinkler, which then aerates and then into a finished foam. Aeration produces an adequate amount of foam bubbles to form an effective foam blanket. We talk about that blanket smothering that fire or that product, whatever it may be, like gasoline. The foam proportioner must be hydraulically matched to the foam nozzle and sprinkler for the proper foam blanket, so you don't want to use the wrong amount of percentage. Okay? With that percentage comes the firefighting foam. Know this. Firefighter foam is 94 to 99.5% water. 94 to 99.5% water. Don't need that much of it, right? There are some ratios and foam ratios, 0.5%, 1%, 3%, and then 6%. Okay? Foam water concentrations. So what we do is a quick story on that is we have Class A foam on our engines, or did at the time. Sorry, I'm retired. But, excuse me, so we used to put it on the tanker, so we saw some new Class A foam, which puts out wildland fires, Class A products, right? We had a demonstration where we'd shot 0.5% foam. Shot up against a wall. We had like not a brick wall, but a masonry wall up at the back of a fire station. Sprayed the 0.5% concentrate on the wall. Created a foam blanket, but then it immediately, within seconds, that foam blanket slowly started to bank down and fall down, okay? It did create the foam blanket and such, but again, it started to fall. Well, then we tried 1% foam, 1% foam. Sprayed against the wall again, much thicker. Instead of falling down like this, 0.5%, it kind of stood there and then slowly moved, okay? But took a while. So meaning it's much more thicker, that foam, a 1%. Then later on, we washed it all off again. Then we shot the 3% foam, sprayed the foam concentrate, sorry. It's a foam and foam concentrate. Sprayed the foam on top of that stucco wall, the cinder blocks. Sprayed it on top of there, and that foam just stuck there, okay, and didn't move, okay, for probably a minute or two. Then it just started to move like so. Minute or two, started to move again. It was stuck up there. The foam was so thick, okay. Sprayed off that wall again, and then we used 6% foam, okay. I was getting down to lunchtime, so I told my battalion chief, I go, hey, my guys got to eat here, so let's finish this and go have lunch. And of course, he looked at me kind of with an attitude. So, all right, Kelleher, we'll get this done. Sprayed the 6% foam on that wall we talked about again the last time. Foam, very thick, on top of the wall, okay, on top of that stucco wall or the cinder block wall, stuck there and stayed there. And it was probably noon when we sprayed it on there. We came back after lunch at 1:15, 1:30, and it was just starting to settle down. That's how thick that foam was. So the 5.5%, 1%, 3%, 6% foam. That's how thick it is when it gets up, as it moves up, okay? Know the difference here between hydrocarbon fuels and polar solvent fuels. Hydrocarbon fuels, as an example of, is gasoline, okay? Gasoline and oil products, okay? That's your hydrocarbon fuel. Your polar solvent fuels, example like ethanol, okay, or alcohol, those are your polar solvent fuels. When you're hydrocarbon fuels, you need at least 1 to 6% product for your foam operation. Your polar solvent fuels, you need at least 3 to 6%. So you need a thicker amount for that polar solvent. Foam concentrates must match the fuel supplied. So foam for hydrocarbon fuels, fires don't extinguish the foam. For polar solvent fuel fires. You got to know which one you're going to be using, okay? There's 3 types of expansion foams. There's low, medium, and high. Basically stating the higher the expansion, the thicker the foam, okay? Just understand the higher the expansion, the thicker the foam. So low expansion foams, example AFFF, remember that, aqueous film forming foam, and then FFP, film forming fluoroprotein foam, has a small air to solution ratio, 7:1 to 20 to 1. They also do well against fuels that don't exceed 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is boiling water, right? Medium expansion foams, there's low expansion foams and medium expansion foams, have a ratio of 20 to 1 to 200 to 1. And they're used for hard to reach areas like basements, mine shafts, and stuff like that below, okay? And then you have your high expansion foam. It's an effective wetting agent that can prevent bulk baled commodities, i.e. paper, rags, and cardboard, okay? What the good thing about foam is, when we talk about a dumpster fire or whatever, we used to spray the dumpster. You have someone starts a fire, like in a big dumpster by, wherever it may be. Sometimes it's a homeless person trying to keep warm, or a cigarette butt, whatever. The dumpster fire takes off. We'd spray water on it. Then we'd have to tear it apart, take a shovel, move it around, spray water, spray it apart. Well, the great thing about foam was you sprayed the foam permeates, okay? Permeates as opposed to just water, okay? Water will get that one surface area on top, but it won't go down low. Whereas foam will permeate and go down thick. That's the beauty about foam. There are 2 specific foam concentrates. They're synthetic and protein-based. The protein-based foams are made of plant or animal matter. They call them blood and guts. We sprayed them that time. I told you about that drill over in Richmond by the pier, or in the marina. And you sprayed it. It was thick, and it really stunk because basically it's animal and guts and products, and it's nasty. I don't see that much in operation today. Most foams are what they call, second type is synthetic base, and that's made from a mixture of detergents, okay? So your 2 types of foam concentrates, your protein base and your synthetic base. Characteristics of foam, know this. The water detention, what foams are like: water detention, long life of vapor suppression, life of foam, which is the protein-based foam, seems to last longer, resistance to burn back, that maintains an intact blanket, the heat resistance, and that's where it resists actual heat of the liquid. The method of application, that's a technique of the application of putting the foam on. The resistance to freezing, doesn't freeze. And the multi-purpose use can be used on 1 or more types of hazards. And then the viscosity, the thickness, or ability to flow. These are all characteristics of foam. Okay, now we're going to more depth of foam. We're going into the types of foam here. Okay, there's the types of foams. There's protein, fluoroprotein, FFP, alcohol-resistant FFP, AFFF, hazardous materials, vapor mitigating foam, medium and high expansion foams. You have protein foam, which is rarely used today. That's an excellent water retention, high heat resistance, and not affected by freezing temperature. Then we talk about fluoroprotein foam, can be plunged into the fuel, only used for hydrocarbon fuels, which is what? Gasoline, oils, right? Can be used with salt or fresh water, meaning you can use from the bay or an ocean with salt water or fresh water. Good water retention and not affected by freezing, stored pre-mixed and with low viscosity. Then there's FFP, film forming fluoroprotein foam. This comes with a pre-mixed. It can be pre-mixed with dry chemical powders, not affected by freezing, and used through non-aerating nozzles. Non-aerating nozzles, pardon me. The alcohol-resistant FFP, it's all regular FFP, but it uses a 3% concentration. Then you have AFFF, aqueous film forming foam, and that's developed by the U.S. Navy, the advantage for flammable liquid firefighting. A fluorinated surfactant was added to detergent and the water, and then a drain from the foam blanket actually floated on top of the hydrocarbons in the fuel spill. This synthetic premixable used a low expansion non-aerating nozzle. Pardon me, it's freeze protected. It has good viscosity, cannot be plunged into the fuel, and has penetrating capabilities for baled storage. So again, has that really good permeating effect. So what the Navy found was, as it's the fuel is around, meaning gasoline or whatever, it was probably high octane fuel because they're used for jets and such. What they found was the foam was sitting on top of it, so it smothered that. Okay, it covered that area. A good surfactant, as they say, right, or a good smothering effect. Then the other types of foams, hazmat vapor mitigating foam. It's used for unmitigated spills of hazardous hot liquids and not used for firefighting situations. There's medium high expansion foams. These are special purpose foams that have a low water content for minimal water damage. It's good for pesticides, fire, fuming acids, and good for concealed spaces and industrial areas. So those are all types of foam. Okay, now we're switching gears over to foam proportioners. Foam proportioners. There's 5 types of foam proportioners. There's line adductors, balanced pressure proportioners, around the pump proportioners, pressure proportioning tanks, coupled water motor tank, motor pump proportioner. Those are all 5 types. We'll go over each one. Here we go. First one is the line adductor, and again, you'll see a picture of this on the lecture. They show a picture with the actual line adductors, and that's what most fire departments have. Most fire engines have, I should say. These are the simplest and least expensive proportioners. There are 2 types of line adductors. There's inline and self-adducting master stream nozzles. The inline adductor uses the Venturi principle, as did the self-adducting master stream, also uses the Venturi principle. Ask what the Venturi principle is. In simplistic view is, here's your hose line, as water flows through the hose line under pressure, okay? Flows through the hose line. If you break the nozzle or pinch it, open it up, what that does, it creates a sucking motion. As water flows through the nozzle, it creates a sucking motion. So what you do when you create, for the firefighting is, when you're going to use a line adductor is, what you do, you have, let's say, 3 length hose, 50-foot lengths each, 150 feet. You break one of the hose lines, the 50-foot nozzle. You take one of the couplings, you connect up to your line adductor. That line adductor now sticks into the 5-gallon bucket you have in the back of your engine, okay? And then then you connect up the line adductor back to the hose. Then you open up, you take your nozzle, which is for your foam nozzle and such. Then you charge it up again. Now water's flowing through it, charged, okay? Well, that line adductor is now in the bucket. A line adductor will not just yet, sorry, we'll say it's hooked up. You take the line adductor, then as water's flowing through it, then you stick it in the bucket, that 5-gallon bucket of foam, and that Venturi principle will suck that foam in and then spray out the nozzle, and at the end of the nozzle, have aerating such, will create finished foam, okay? So that's what I mean by Venturi principle. As water flows through the hose nozzle, it creates a sucking motion underneath, and when there's pierced underneath, and then it creates and sucks out, and then it goes out the other end. So inline adductor also is most common type of line adductor. And then the self-adducting master stream is once common, now rare, and it also lacks mobility. So that's your 2 types of adductors. The ejector is very important. It's not the nozzle. The ejector controls the flow of foam, and the nozzle or bail should be fully open. So at the end of the nozzle, it's got the bail. When they talk about the bail, that's that handle. It's got to be fully open. It's got to be fully open so it shoots out water and that finished product foam. It's aerated. It's already a bubble. It's going to come out thick. Okay, and that's what you have. When you come out just like water-like, that means it's not good enough. It's not sucking it up or whatever. And then as it goes out and it sprays out with that nice bubble pattern, nice thick white foam and such, that's that finished foam. And another thing is, as you spray it, maybe show a video on that or not, or something, you spray it on top of the ground to bounce or up against a wall because you want it to bounce and then to kind of for the foam to settle, okay? You don't just spray it on top of stuff like water. You bounce on a wall or bounce on the ground, and then you create that foam blanket and then let it permeate everywhere, okay? The second type of foam proportioner is the balanced pressure proportioner. These are the most reliable, and it's used in fixed systems with mobile apparatus application like the airport crash rescue. What I'm going to do is I took some pictures. A buddy of mine I retired with, we ride our bikes together. He works in San Francisco. He took my friend out because I live by the San Francisco airport. We went inside that one at the airport, took some pictures of the crash rescue. Pretty impressive. And I'm also going to show a video that was given to me when I don't know if you guys knew about this, but that Hilltop event a couple Saturdays ago, I guess it's in October, mid-October now of 2020, shut down the freeway. I was trying to get to Oregon, take my daughter to college, back to school that is. Hit that freeway accident, okay? What it is was a tanker ran into or maybe a motorcycle ran into a tanker, spin, release a product, it ignited, okay? Shut down the whole freeway. I had to go through my hood of Elsa Brand and everything else to avoid it. But that being said, I have video from people that I knew, that I worked with, and showed me of a gigantic foam blanket that they sprayed on top. I'll show the video on that, and I'll put that on email as well, okay? But in any case, those are two types of things with the airport crash rescue. I'll show some picture of that, and then also that video of the actual event at I-80, okay, over by Hilltop. The primary advantage of the balanced pressure proportioner is its ability to monitor demand for foam concentrate being supplied. Its ability to discharge foam from some outlets and water from others at the same time. So balanced pressure proportioners are mostly for that airport crash rescue. There's third type is around the pump proportioner. It's a built-in proportioner that's installed in a mobile fire apparatus. Today is structural apparatus. When they talk about mobile, that means it's mobile, it's driving around. When they talk about fixed, that means it's staying there, it's grounded, it's not moving anywhere. The disadvantages of the around the pump proportioners: the pump cannot take advantage of the incoming pressure, and the pump can only pump foam at one at a time, not water. You can't go in successfully. These days, these nail pumpers, these fire engines actually have, you can switch from right away from water back to foam. Water to foam very quickly. They have separate pumps. It makes a quick switch. We had to sometimes have to pour it in the tank and go from there. Now they're separate, okay? So it's much more technically advanced. The fourth type of foam proportioner is the pressure proportioner. That's the pressure proportioner tank system. Pressure proportioner tank system. It's found on fixed systems. Has a one or two tanks designed so that a small amount of water is pumped into the concentrate. And then the fifth type is coupled water motor pump proportioner. Consists of two positive displacement rotary gear pumps that are mounted on a common shaft. One is for water, and the other one is for foam, okay? Remember we talked about that with the pressure. As water flows through to build up pressure, it goes through the volute, and then through the volute, and as the volute creates pressure, spits it out, and it's going that wheel is spinning, pumps out pressure at the end. Same thing applies here with a single stage pump, and a double stage means there's two of them, okay? Here's what they call a deluge system. I don't know if you guys hear about the foam, but a foam apparatus for like an aircraft hangar. There's a nice picture. This is the amount of foam that you'll see like at a gigantic aircraft hangar. And that's a regular sprinkler head, only the sprinkler head is probably 6 by 6 feet by 6 feet, maybe 6 by 8 feet, and dumping all that thick foam. That's that processed foam. Looks like just like a bunch of suds, doesn't it? This type of product is going to put out that big fire if you have a gigantic airplane, okay, with jet fuel, okay? So you have that. Moving along, we're almost done here. Foam nozzle and sprinklers. They deliver the foam as the fire or spill, whether it's a nozzle or a sprinkler. Just saw a picture of that. There are several types of sprinklers. There's several types of foam nozzles. There's a low expansion foam nozzle, which is most effective appliance for generating low expansion foam. Aerating foam nozzle. I use that in Texas Refinery for school. I told you about that. Self-ejecting foam nozzle works like an inline ejector, but it's part of the nozzle. It connects off the hose line. The standard fixed flow fog nozzle, it's a variable pattern fog nozzle with foam solution to produce low expansion, short lasting foam. Then you have the automatic nozzle, which is an ejector, and the nozzle must be fully open. Then you have foam water sprinklers that are found on fixed foam deluge and foam water systems, usually AFFF. I think you just saw a picture of that earlier with the deluge system. Then you got high back pressure foam aspirator. It's forcing foam maker as an inline aspirator used for delivered foam pressure. High expansion foam generator brings a high air contents semi-stable foam. There are two types: mechanical blower and water aspirating type. Just understand them. Don't need to know them. System description: a foam system must have adequate water supply. Know this. The foam system must have an adequate water supply. It needs a foam concentrate supply. It needs a piping system, and then needs a proportioning equipment and a foam maker. So it needs those parts. Foam system must have adequate water supply, foam concentrate supply, a piping system, proportioning equipment, and a foam maker. Know that. There are 6 types of foam extinguishing systems. Last thing we're going to cover. There are 6 types of foam extinguishing systems. There's self-contained, there's fixed, there's semi-fixed type A, semi-fixed type B, there's high expansion, and there's foam water. We'll go over each one. The self-contained one has all the ingredients within a system, like an airport fire apparatus, crash rescue. The fixed system automatically applies foam to the target hazard, like a deluge system. It's fixed, meaning it's not going anywhere, it's not mobile. The semi-fixed type A, the discharge piping is in place, but is not attached to a permanent source of foam. It requires a separate source of foam solution, meaning you got to maybe drive to it and pump into it. The semi-fixed type B is the discharge piping is piped throughout the facility like a water distribution system, okay? And then your high expansion is designed for local application or total flooding as commercial or industrial areas. And then your 6 type is your foam water system. It's a deluge system, deluge sprinkler system with foam introduced into it, like we just saw that picture of it, okay? And finally, all systems of foam systems or operations should be inspected semi-annually, twice a year, biannually, twice a year, okay? So know that. And the very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some pictures, which I think there's some pictures on the, there are some pictures on the PowerPoint, but I'll show you some pictures right now. So just kind of get an idea, visual of what we're talking about. This is a handout I used to give the people before COVID, of course. This is how that foam, that's what I talked about the firefighters at the end of the nozzle, okay? If they're going to break the nozzle over here at this end, they're going to go into a line ejector and it's going to pump it out, Venturi principle, go out the end of the hose line and then shoot out foam like so, okay? Then here's your line ejector, like so. Here's your line ejector. It's going to go in here. Here's your engine. It's going to pump the line. You're going to break it. You're going to use an ejector. It's going to go into that bucket. Here's your ejector. The Venturi principle, as water's flowing through it, creates a sucking motion, sucks that foam out, and at the end of the nozzle has that pressurized foam. Then notice I talked about you bounce the foam off the wall, okay? Don't bounce off the ground or off the foam, and then it creates kind of a blanket on top, okay? There's that foam ejector itself, okay? That's where it breaks the nozzle. As you break the coupling nozzle, you can up a couple here. Then the line ejector's here. Then you're going to stick it in the tank. And then you're going to couple up again to the rest of the nozzle. It's going to flow throughout here. And again, here's that creation, that suction motion through here. As water's flowing through here, it creates, pressure. Well, then you breach that. It's going to create some sucking motion from here, hence the Venturi principle. Okay. What else can I show you? Here's the picture of the semi-fixed type A foam system in the middle here. This is semi-fixed type system, okay? Notice that you have a fixed system, but you got to bring the foam up here like this. This is like at a tank block system, like tank block where you drive over the freeway and you'll see when you go over it near refineries, they're going to store the products where they're going to put foam on top of here just in case it catches fire. Then of course this one on the bottom, that's your like I said, your type A, semi-fixed type A. We're going to pump water into the bottom. Okay, going to put pressure. It's already fixed. And then you're going to create foam. It's going to be pumped in here, and then foam will sit on top of the product and just keep it cool. Okay? And I think here's a different type of, here's a burning foam. Well, actually on top of it happened this, where there's a tank block. It started permeating up top. It started catching fire here. The foam was sprayed on top, which puts a fire out. There's a gigantic air aspirator. This is an example when you have a gigantic amount of foam. Air aspirator is this huge nozzle. It's going to pump out like about this big of orifice, maybe like 6 inches, 12 inches orifice. Pump out a big, thick amount of foam. And then there's your reductor. Okay, you're going to break it in to get your line deductor. Where the nozzle it is. And what else can I show you? Okay, here's a firefighter taking that line deductor. Okay, right here, and he's sticking it into a tank. Here's the line deductor here, and as the water's flowing through here, it creates a Venturi principle, goes out the other end, and it's going to have a sucking motion, so it sucks out and goes out to the other end of the nozzle. Okay, that's all I got, and that's it for part 5. See you for part 6.